What's up, Banana Bunch? Another episode of the Jungle Gyms podcast. How we doing, everyone? Great. Me too, unless you said bad, in which case, I'm fine. It's fine. Before we get started, you know where I'm going with this. It's time for those of you who haven't yet to leave us a sweet review on Apple Podcasts. You know, you get on Apple Podcasts, you go, hey, I really like the show I'm listening to because I want it to be successful. And that's right. The easiest way, and it's very cheap, arguably free way to support a show. Did I say that in the wrong tense? It doesn't matter. You know where I'm going with this. If you leave a review for us, that helps us keep our ranking, moving up in the ranking. We want to keep our standing. We want to be, I'm talking, it's just me and a frog in my pocket. I want to be the biggest podcast on the planet, right? I'm coming for you, Joe Rogan, literally. But mostly we'll do that if you invite me. All kidding aside, though, whenever you leave a review or you share the show with your friends and they listen to it, those downloads and those reviews help us, become the most popular. And I feel pretty confident from reading some of your emails that you want me to be successful. So please do that. It's helping. I want to hit 100 reviews by the end of the month. We're getting close. But we're also getting close to the end of the month. So let's get those 100 reviews in. We don't have too many left, but we need some more. And thank you to all of you who have already sent out and posted those reviews. It means a lot, truly. I literally, 50% of my job at least is watching analytics and trying to track, okay, what did we do this time that worked? Did I say it a certain way this time to get them to write more reviews this week? And that kind of thing. Just so you can have a quick peek into my podcast-related psyche. Well, this week's episode's a big one, okay? And I'm actually, it's hard usually to get me to shut up as I'm describing how I'm not going to talk much already. It's getting long-winded. But this week is a long one. I wanted to do a little beer and wine spectacular. Now, as I promised last week, we've got a big section at the end where I'm joined by 50 West Brewing because Jungle Gyms and 50 West just collaborated on a new juicy IPA that's available in stores. And you know what? If those of you listened last week, you knew this. And you also knew that you were going to grab at least a can or two so you could sample along with us later in the show when we actually get to try it together, right? Okay, I guess technically I've already tried it at this point, but you don't have to know that, right? I'm just giving you a little inside baseball there. But I thought that would be kind of fun. It's sort of a test run, right? Because in the future, what I'd like to do is get some products that we carry in store and say, hey, next week or in 2 weeks or whatever the lead time needs to be, and you can all help me determine that. You can get some of the stuff in store, and then we can kind of do these taste tests together. I think that'd be a lot more fun than just watching me eat stuff, right? The internet dictates that that's all people really want to do on YouTube is watch people eat interesting or new or strange to them types of things. And, we like to encourage people to try new stuff here at the Jungle. So I think that might be the future. Now, of course, if you didn't think a week was enough lead time, or if you have other comments or just want to talk to me, you can get in touch with me one of two ways. podcast@junglegyms.com if you want to send me an email, or you could call me at country code 1, then area code 513-674-6855. I played a message we got 2 episodes ago, so you can actually see. When I do that, I'm just trying to trick you all into going, oh, maybe I should catch up on a previous episode if this is the first episode you've ever jumped in on, right? It's kind of a clever little move. Yeah, that's just it's another little insider trading. How about that instead? But coming up first, I wanted to introduce, and I won't even go that far with this. I just want to dive right into this week's episode because it's a packed one. I know some of you clicked on this. You're like, wow, Mark, it's almost 2 hours this week. Who are you, Joe Rogan? I'm like, no, that's too many Joe Rogan references in this episode already. But when I first started here, I met, you meet a lot of people at a new job, right? But due to the nature of our business and how busy we tend to be, I don't get to really meet everyone. And when you come into the store, you'll notice also I'm somewhat physically distant from some of the other departments, right? I'm like one of the first things you see. So you can imagine that location does help breed familiarity in this case. However, this one gentleman made a point of coming in and introducing himself to me, and I've been trying to sync something up with our calendar so we could have him on the show. And I'm really excited about this one. He is incredibly knowledgeable about all kinds of stuff. Literally, too many things to ask. I'm trying to tease you without giving up the theme of the interview about to play. With me today in the WJJI studio is Michael B. from the wine department, sommelier. You have a lot of titles, I'm sure, at this point that I did not ask before we started.
Yeah, and you don't want to know. It's a bunch of letters and like alphabet soup.
Oh, okay. Well, now I'm extra curious because you said soup, one of my favorite foods. No, welcome to the show. Thank you so much. I know I don't think I've told the audience this, but you were one of the first people that came in and introduced yourself to me when I first started here. So that meant a lot to me because I was like, oh, it's like new job things and you never know, especially in the creative space. So thank you for that. And I'm glad that we finally got a chance to do this.
So am I. I mean, let's just face it. I heard there was somebody interesting working here, and it's like I had to rush over and say hi.
Within reason. I was like, well, now that my head is huge. Michael, tell the audience realistically, what's your job here?
So I'm the fine wine manager for the company, but really I get to talk about wine, taste wine, write about wine, and educate people about wine. Any questions they have from, why is white Zinfandel not white, to, the difference between a left bank Bordeaux, a right bank Bordeaux, anything, from the mundane to the sublime.
Ooh, I like it. You've got that, the way you talk, you have that something about your speaking gait. I can tell that you know about not just wine. Wine, definitely. I'm like, of course you know about wine. But then I'm like, I bet you have a lot of other secret knowledge too.
Well, I do have some long-held hobbies, and like Formula One racing,
ooh, yes.
Tennis, just things that are a little bit off the beaten path. Curling.
Oh,
my son was an ice hockey player, and I love ice hockey, but there was always like off to the side there was like curling lanes. I'm like, what is that?
Yeah.
So by the time it hit big on the Olympics, Winter Olympics, it's like, I got to learn about this.
It's an interesting sport. It's one I've always wanted to. I kind of want to try it myself because I didn't skate a ton by any means, especially due to my paralysis in my youth. But I always really, for some reason, had a weird affinity for both ice hockey, being on the rink, and I was always curious about curling when it got in there. But I want to get back to curling.
Yeah.
Let's swing back to the wine end on Jungle. So before you came to Jungle, what were you doing?
So. In Northern Kentucky, there was a chain that had been around for a while called Cork and Bottle.
Okay.
And I worked for the family that owned it, general manager from 2005-ish on. We had a couple of stores, and we really specialized in bourbon, high-end Burgundy and Bordeaux, champagnes, and really every spirit from anywhere in the world. That was just our métier. We just love that kind of stuff. So now whenever anyone comes in and like, do you have that thing they put in champagne to make it, sweeter? Creme de cassis? Key Royale? Yeah, that's it. So it's always fun.
Oh, that is fun. Well, what made you, what was the appealing part of Jungle coming up here?
Well, I think it's probably having the best wine selection in the Midwest and one of the best wine selections in the country. I mean, when we put our inventory online, people lost their mind. They were like calling up and sending us emails saying, do you really have that? I mean, is that something you can get, or is it in the cellar right now? And everything we have online is in the cellar. There's no, we might get it or we can get it for you. It's like available to come pick up right now.
And if I understand correctly, you were the driving force behind putting the online inventory up.
Well, I mean, it was hidden back there.
Yeah.
I mean, we had it, but somebody had to walk in, find the wine department, get the door open, and then, so making it easy for them to search it and make it a part of, our daily sales life and a part of people's, routine when they're looking for something special for any occasion.
And it's funny that you mentioned that because I still somewhat feel like the outsider here, right? Because I'm still fairly new, but for a long time, I always thought the cellar was just a gag thing, like I just felt like it'd be on brand for Jungle Jim's, like, ooh, and I just assumed you opened those doors and it went to like an employees only area, right? So it is interesting now that I've been here, seeing it open all the time and seeing you and Ed and everybody like bringing people in and out of there, where it is it's an experiential thing, right? It's a really cool room. And I mean, is that a common thing? I mean, do you find cellars like that at other stores, or is this a Jungle Jim's thing?
No. Actually, we had a guy in from Toronto about 2 months ago, and Pete heard about it, and a friend who lives here in Cincinnati said, you have to come see this place, Jungle Gyms, and brought him in. And he walked in, he looked around, and it's 5 levels high on both sides, and just wines from all over the world, some of the finest selections you'd ever want to see. And he's like, how far would you have to go from Cincinnati? How big a circle would you have to draw around Cincinnati to find someplace like this? I said, I really don't know, but it'd have to be at least 1,800 miles. I mean, there's just no place, I have friends from Chicago who come in and like, nope, nothing like this in Chicago.
I love hearing that, though. Yeah. And I think that's so cool about Jungle Gyms in general, that we tend to have the foresight to do stuff. If we're going to do anything, we're going to do it big, right? I mean, hell, right before we did this interview, we were just talking about dressing the outside of the studio walls, and I love that about this place. That's crazy to think about. I would assume then, so, I would guess you've probably, more than maybe any of the other departments, you probably have people that visit from probably the furthest distances, I would almost guess.
Yeah. There's 2 couples each have a couple of kids. They're in their early 30s, and they plan a couple of trips a year from West Virginia. They drive, get here on Friday night, check into a hotel, shop all day Saturday. They'll call ahead and, get a few things together, want to look at a few items, and then they'll make their purchases, and they usually stop in, say goodbye, and maybe pick up a couple of things on Sunday before they drive back to West Virginia.
That's so cool. Yeah, and I'm just sitting here. I'm like that. I love those kinds of stories, and I love it because to me it should be such a globally known brand. Which obviously that's what part of my job, right? But I love hearing those stories because it is a true testament. I mean, I meet someone in the store, I'd say every day, that's not from town. They're just like, oh yeah, we drove out here for whatever, or came out for peppers. I had a guy on the show recently that came into town for that.
A lot of people, they come in the side door, so they're in the beer and wine department first. Yeah. They don't come in the front door. And, the first thing they say is, never been here before, where is stuff? And I actually walk the store every week just to see, so I know where the syrups are in the Italian section.
Sure.
Or the easiest way to get over to international, or just whatever, because people, they're a little overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And we have maps, but, most Americans can't read a map if they're on the highway, much less if they're in a grocery store.
It's funny that you mentioned that about the entrance, because I'd say if I heard one thing ever whenever I'm hanging out over there is people going, where is, and then insert product name there. So is there a specific layout to the beer and wine department that makes sense maybe to you all that I could help the audience understand?
Well, yeah, when you come in the main entrance, the store is shaped kind of like a horseshoe. Mm-hmm. And beer and wine is on, if you're looking at a horseshoe in front of you, it's in the bottom left-hand side of the horseshoe. Mm-hmm. So when you're entering it, you enter from the top of the horseshoe, from the main entrance, and you just go to the back of the store, and across, the first thing you see is the value items, like carts with special closeout items and clearance things.
Right.
And then as you go further back, it gets more and more high end. And you get to the reserve walls, you get to the laydown section, and then the back left-hand side is the reserve cellar, the walk-in cellar. Mm-hmm. And behind that, outside that, going further to the back, is the higher-end Napa and Bordeaux and Burgundy and so on.
Cool. And I know, what I've noticed too in recent years, I'm sure they've been there probably for a while, but I love now seeing all of the aisle labels as well, where it's location specific. And so I was just sort of curious because I figured you all would have control of those things as far as how it was laid out. So I love hearing that. And it's as you get deeper into it, it's kind of it's actually really funny now that I think about it out loud, because the closeouts are totally beginner entry level stuff, right? You're okay, yeah, I just want to try a little something. And then as you get in, it's expert mode. So now I can totally judge the type of people in the back far corner because they're clearly experts at this point. They've drank their way through the front of the store. That's so cool. Talking about the reserve cellar, what? Look, realistically, I know I've joked with you about a bunch about this off air, but I know zero about wine. So you say things like Bordeaux, and I think you said something about Left Bank or something before. What does any of that mean? Could you maybe go down a list of some of the highlights, some of the bigger types, so I can maybe understand, and then hopefully.
So that's actually a really good question, because whenever anybody comes into the beer and wine department, we always tell them, You're going to have fun, and you're probably going to learn something, because you want people to be able to make up their own mind. They don't have to ask, is this a good $10 Chardonnay? But as we work our way through in the cellar, about 50% is California and Pacific Northwest Oregon, and the other 40% is French from Bordeaux, left bank Bordeaux, right bank Bordeaux, Rhone, and Burgundy and Champagne. And then the other 10% is Northern Italian, Central Italian, Spanish, Pacific Northwest, and a little bit of dessert wine. But those are all, those are places that mean something. But when you come in, you can actually see, first growth Bordeaux. We have all 5 first growth Bordeaux. We have most of the second labels from the first growth. We have tons of Grand Cru, the highest rated Burgundies, tons of Premier Cru Burgundies. The most expensive wine in the world every year is Domaine Le Romigny-Conti, which is a domain in Burgundy, which is in eastern France. And the most expensive wine from that is, in the $14,000, $15,000 bottle range. And
wow.
We get so little of that.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, so you say a number like that, and then, of course, that's like, my head immediately goes to, Jungle Jim's has a $15,000 bottle of wine in the store kind of a thing? Like, okay, what? Well, no, just what? That's the whole question. No, but, but realistically, why? Like, what makes that so special? What makes that?
Well, the highest rated vineyards in Burgundy are Grand Cru vineyards, and the highest rated of the Grand Cru vineyards are the monopoly vineyards, the ones where the entire vineyard is owned by one producer. And Romigny-Conti, Romigny, is the highest rated Grand Cru Pinot Noir in the world. It's very, very low production, sometimes as low as, this is going to sound technical because it is, but,
no, but say
as low as 10 hectoliters per hectare, which is like saying about 150,000 pounds of grapes per acre.
Okay.
Which seems like a lot, except for that entire vineyard is 1.17 acres.
Oh, wow.
So there's not a lot.
Yeah.
And with yields that low and demand so high, every billionaire in the world wants some, and there really literally isn't enough, even if, for a 6-pack for everybody who's got $1 billion. Not going to happen.
That's crazy. That's so interesting. So, and one of the things I was going to ask about that is, like, with some of these vineyards and realistically some of the locations, is there something special about that, or is it always just quality obviously being a big part of it, but is it so much of it supply and demand driven?
Well, it's all supply and demand on an item like that, but it's also quality because when they do the harvest, they handpick the grapes into small 1-foot wide baskets. Then they sort those grapes. If there's any flaw, they just throw them away.
Wow.
And before they get to that point, they drop most of the clusters off the vine. They only have 1 or 2 maybe clusters per vine to start off with. They just drop them on the ground. And there is no second label. They don't sell any grapes to anybody. They just make whatever wine they can out of whatever they can harvest. Wow. And they're just, all they care about is making the best Pinot Noir in the world.
Yeah, they're just like, we know this one thing we're going to do well. I'm so interested that nothing gets done with the other grapes. I'm almost surprised.
Well, I mean, it's just a situation where there wouldn't be enough anyway.
Right.
I mean, there's such a low yield, and the funny thing is there are legal limits to how much wine you can make in a Grand Cru vineyard.
Okay.
There's a limit to what they could make, but they're so far beneath it they would never have to worry about it.
Wow.
But, people always, they always think of wine as being a commodity, and it is. But if you look at the total volume of Bordeaux versus the total volume of Burgundy, it's like less than 100th.
Really?
It's much smaller, and the yields are much lower. When you look at like just one single house, I think they made 40,000 bottles of Chateaubriand estate, lead estate wine,
okay.
Their first growth. And the total production for somebody like Domaine Le Romigny-Conti for all of their Pinot Noir would be, 3,000 bottles. So 1/10 is just one of the first growths.
Wow. So you keep saying first growth. What does that mean?
Well, in 1855,
Yes.
The French government did a ranking of all the Bordeaux west of the Dordogne, north of the village of Bordeaux itself. It's a relatively small area when you consider all the in the region. But there were 4 chateaux. They got named first growth in 1855: Latour, Lafitte, Aubryon, and Margaux. And they added Mouton Rothschild. It was Lafitte Rothschild in 1855, and in 1973, Mouton Rothschild applied and was granted first growth status.
So cool. I'm like, oh, wow. Of course, there's some, I was very excited that you had like a historical lesson for this too. Because I was curious. Again, I think one of the things that's been daunting about the world of wine to me and why I've kind of stuck with beer, generally speaking, is that it feels like, this is going to sound so stupid, but it feels like there's a lot of terminology and obviously requisite knowledge to really appreciate it. And it's funny, like to put it into another language, I think about it the way I think about like guitar players, and I could spend a day and a half just speaking on one. I'm like, all right, here's his picking style. And so now I'm kind of going, oh, this is why it's hard to talk to me. But realistically, I'm sitting here thinking that like, maybe the way I should word it is, how would you take someone like me and help them get over that hurdle? Because I'm laughing that you really were speaking French, but a lot of that was almost like another language at times where I'm like, oh, cool. Like, I've heard of some of the locations, but it's like things like Grand Cru, the first growth, all that stuff. I'm just like, oh, cool.
Maybe you do it the same way you do everything else. You start at the beginning. You don't start at the top.
Start at the closeouts.
Yeah, like we just start with entry-level wines and find out what you like. Yeah. And you just like each week you come to like one of our wine tastings, like the Wednesday night wine tasting we're doing tonight, where we do like 5, 6, 7 wines, or a walkabout where we'll do like 30 or 40 of them. Okay. And you can just try wines side by side and you start to develop a taste for what you like. And sometimes people get to a certain point and $25 a bottle, they're perfectly happy and they never go past it. Yeah. But sometimes, and this is something that a lot of people have said, God damn you for giving me that $100 bottle. You can't go backwards. Once you find out you like something, now you've got a new benchmark.
Of course.
So that happens sometimes, but a lot of times, people they're just trying to find their own personal discovery level. They want to be happy. They want to try things. They want to be challenged. They don't want, and that's a good thing about Jungle Gyms. Nobody's going to make fun of you if you say something wrong or you just, you're not sure what you want. People come in sometimes and they say, and I kid you not, I had a wine in a bottle with a yellow label and it wasn't real sweet. And from there, we figured out what wine it was, because you ask them if it's a slope shoulder bottle or a square shoulder bottle, which tells you where the wine comes from and what the shape of the bottle actually tells you a lot about what it could potentially be. Oh. So we go there and we start, a little bit of the flavor profile. Somebody will say, it tastes a little smoky. Now we're looking at a slope shoulder bottle. It's a little smoky with a yellow label. We're looking at Syrah from Côte d'Aron in southern France, or maybe, Washington State. And by God, we find it.
That's amazing. I love that. You spoke to a point that I think I want to really make clear to the audience, that from the jump, all of you have made me, I wasn't kidding when I said you made me feel comfortable here at work just by coming in and introducing yourself. So I can guarantee to anybody listening that you won't get, this is like the one place where I really don't feel like anyone would be weird if I was like, ugh, or, oh, I really like this one and it's something terrible, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if nothing else, we'll all keep it to ourselves. We'll just talk about it in the podcast room. But no, but that is something. And I think maybe that's another thing that I'm not realizing. I used to joke about before I got into like coffee, that there's a lot of like menu anxiety where I'm like, oh, there's a lot of terms here that I have no idea what those mean. And then not that you're worried about getting made fun of, but like, I tried a lot of this stuff later in life, and I was kind of like, oh, you don't know what you should be ordering at Starbucks by now, Mark? So I really appreciate that you guys, I would say that so many times whenever I've gone to another like a place that carries fancy wines, there is this stuffy kind of like,
Oh, absolutely.
and I get that because it's like it's a field with a lot of knowledge and, I'm sure you had to work hard, and we'll get there, but I'm sure you had to work hard, for a long time to become an expert. But what I think is so cool is that, yeah, you guys are really unassuming about it. And it's like, yeah, you have all this knowledge, but you're not going to make me feel weird about it. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
It's a very long roundabout way to get to a thanks for that. But I think it's important that the audience hears that kind of stuff too, because it's like,
because people, like I said before, they might want to learn something, but they want to be talked down to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're like incredibly approachable. I feel that way about the whole team, where everybody's like, "Oh yeah, I brought some family in recently, and it was just fun." I ran into Ed that day, and he was just like, "Well, let's talk about a few things here." And it was funny to see him just really like, he's always been kind and friendly and fun with me, but it was really nice to see him like really turn it on for the customer too. And I was like, "Oh man, that's just it's so nice." I don't know. That's a simple way to put it, but it made me at ease. But let me roll out of that into, I'm still constantly thinking about the bottle tell. So what are some other tells in the wine world about, like you mentioned, the slope shoulder versus the square shoulder? Are there other tells in bottles or the way it's packaged or anything like that could give you an idea?
Well, yeah. I mean, when you're looking at French wine, people always ask what the grape varietals are. And that's one of the things we explain to them. A bottle with sloping shoulders instead of square shoulders, that's the typical bottle from Burgundy. That's why they don't put Pinot Noir on the label in Burgundian wines. Yeah. If it's a red, that's the only red you can do technically. A little bit of Gamay, but that's not important. So the Pinot is never on the label. So people just don't realize that all red wine from Burgundy is Pinot Noir. All white wine from Burgundy, with one exception, is Chardonnay. So it never says Chardonnay, but if it's not Chardonnay, it has to say. There's a grape called Aligoté, which is grown in a little village called Bouzeron. And if it's Bouzeron, it's Aligoté. There's no Chardonnay there.
Interesting. I think it's so cool how so much of this is regionally based. So well,
they've been growing grapes there for 2,000 years.
That's what I was just going to say.
They got really, really good at it.
Yeah, and so then that really brings me to one of my other thoughts, which is I'm seeing a lot now of it happening. Obviously, you've heard, California, and you mentioned Washington State and all of that. How are we doing on the American side? Like, is it comparable? I mean, obviously it's a much shorter. We haven't even been here that long.
So it is more than comparable. There have been numerous blind tastings with French judges between American California wines, Oregon Pinot Noirs, and French Burgundy and French Bordeaux. And the French wines always lose.
Really?
And there was a movie called Bottle Shock, and it's about Chateau Montelena.
Okay.
But really, it's the real story was there was a winemaker named Mike Gergich who has his own place now, has for a long time, about 40 years. And he was a winemaker at Chateau Montelena, and they made Chardonnay, and they went in and they beat all the white Burgundies in a blind tasting, and it was all French judges in France.
That's amazing.
And a guy named Stephen Spurrier from London set it up, a wine merchant who had a wine school and a wine store. And he didn't think the California wines were win. He went to California, tried some stuff, thought it was pretty good, thought it'd be a good publicity stunt,
right?
To sell American wine in Europe, right?
Yeah, that's funny.
And the French judges boycotted him in his store. They blamed him because he brought in wine, and it's like they must be ringers or what. They were going up against the best Bordeaux and Burgundy and made at the time.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened on the red side. The Bordeaux lost to wine had been. I think they had planted the grapes quite a long time ago, but the winery itself, wasn't that old. We're talking 1976.
Right.
Right? Anyway.
That's crazy. Why do you think that they won?
Because California is a Mediterranean climate, but it has great soil. It has great, just everything that you need to make great wine is present there.
Okay.
And it was just a situation where Bordeaux is a continental climate. So they have real winters and everything.
Oh, sure.
And they were also trapped by tradition. They were doing things the way they'd always done it, and nobody had ever made better wine than them, in their opinion.
Right.
So when somebody in California says, well, we can do this and we can do that, but we can let the grapes get a little riper, and we can do, we can buy French barrels, but they took, the French oak, which is the best oak. They took the best pruning techniques, but they had a little bit warmer climate, a little bit cooler evenings, which maintains acidity, so you can get more ripeness because it's balanced by the acidity in the grape, and all of a sudden, you've got the best Cabernet ever made in the middle of Napa in 1972.
That's amazing. And, I was so curious about that because, again, one of those things as an outsider to the wine world, I kind of just blanket assumed I'm like, okay, all the European stuff's going to be the best for the reasons you stated, right? They've been doing it for thousands of years. But it is interesting to hear how we do, and as people get trapped in those traditions, which aren't always the best option now. So I'm curious, do you think that some of these, have they changed at all overseas?
Well, yeah, there was a wine critic named Robert Parker, and he founded Wine Advocate, he was a lawyer in Baltimore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but he thought he knew more about wine, and he had a really good palate, and he was actually right. He does have a good palate. And he founded Wine Advocate, which was advertising free from day one, never took any ads, so there was never any chance that somebody would, give him a free bottle or this or that to get a good score.
Right.
And he's actually been given the highest award the French government gives out to non-French citizens because of his work raising the quality and the recognition of French wines over the years. I mean, there was a time when if he gave a wine 100 points, it went from being a $50 bottle of wine to a $800 bottle of wine overnight.
Wow.
That's the kind of clout he had.
That's amazing.
And he still has to a degree, but there are more people now and the wine world's bigger. But yes, there's been there's Old World, which is France and Italy and Spain, and there's New World, which is the United States, Australia, and South America. And there are a few other places that blend in, but that's the bulk of it. So the American style is, which is a little riper, a little bolder on the fruit, has become more the standard. And some of the Bordeaux guys took a piece of that, and because of global warming, now they can do a little bit riper style. Like, we try wines all the time from all over the world, and you can see, based on the vintage and the winemaker decisions, which direction things are going.
Interesting. And I didn't even think about that with the global warming too. That's probably honestly weirdly beneficial in certain areas.
It actually is weirdly beneficial.
Yeah, it's like I hate to be like, oh, this is one of the, a little bit of good news.
Don't let people know where we live.
Yeah, right. You talked about developing a palate earlier, and that's, I think, another one of those things that I've always been curious about. How does one develop a palate? How do I run my,
by trying as many different wines as you can and keeping an open mind. When I first started drinking Scotch, I tried Islay Scotch. And Islay Scotch has a really, really high peat content. It tastes like somebody put a fire out with it. And, that's an acquired taste. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah. And, Highland Scotch is finished in port and sherry cask, and it doesn't have nearly as much of a smoky edge to it.
Okay.
And it's a touch sweeter. Well, same thing in wine. There are wines in the world that have really firm tannins that people initially feel are bitter, even though I don't. I can understand what they're saying. If you ever put like a really strong black tea bag in hot water and let it steep too long, that tannin, that's that bitter kind of feel on it.
Oh,
that astringent kind of thing where it feels drying in the mouth. That's the same exact compound that you get out of grape skins that gives the same effect. If a wine's really tannic, then it either needs a little bit of time to rest and integrate, or you just have to enjoy it in that way.
When you say rest and integrate, what exactly do you mean by that?
That means age in the bottle for anywhere from 3 to 10 years, just so that the tannins integrate a little bit and they soften up and they become more part of the wine instead of on top of the wine or separate from it.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, because I could see that being, I mean, I've tried a few things, but I'm like, I can definitely understand like the layering of flavors there and how.
And grapes have different levels of tannins where it's based on just the natural characteristics of the grape. Like there are some grapes that are really thin-skinned, like Pinot Noir, that have low tannin, but there's a grape called Nebbiolo from northern Italy that has thin skin but very high tannins. And conversely, there's like thick-skinned grapes like Cabernet Sauvignon or Tannat that have high tannins, and thick-skinned grapes that have low tannins. It's just like it's not that there's no rhyme or reason to it. Thick-skinned grapes tend to have more, thin-skinned grapes tend to have less, but it just depends on, the genetics of the grape.
Wild. I love how much of that, like, it's almost, I talk about food being an art, and obviously making alcohol obviously would fit in that mold too. But it's crazy to me how much like science really is behind this.
Well, here's something. There's science and then there's philosophy. So
Ooh.
when you have wine with dinner, do you think of the wine being the stem and the food being the flower, or the food being the stem and the wine being the flower?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I'm the latter in that regard.
So in France, the wine's the stem, the food's the flower.
Okay.
In California, it's the other way around. It just tends to be, I'm going to have this big, giant, juicy cab with my steak.
Right.
Whereas, I'm going to have this elegant, structured wine with my pâté de foie gras.
Do you do a lot of like wine and food pairings as well here?
So I don't do a lot of them here, but I do occasionally do dinners for people off site. And yeah, it'll be like, we did have Jungle and his wife Joni donated wine tasting in the cellar, and a financial planner from up in Canton who went to Miami University. It was the donation was to support Miami University athletics.
Oh, okay.
And a Miami alum who is a financial advisor up in Canton, Ohio, bought it. And I did French white Burgundies, Chardonnays, and California Cabernets. And what was funny was he showed up, and he had a French couple who grew up in Burgundy with him. No pressure.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
How'd that go over?
Actually went over really well. I was pleasantly surprised. They liked my explanations and why, I picked the wines. And as we, tried them, we had charcuterie board and, some really nice cheeses and everything to try with them. It went very well. It was fun.
I assume that would be one in your skill set too. There's just, again, something about you. I was just like, I bet he knows the perfect thing to pair with literally everything in the back of that store. So hopefully you're not inundated with questions now like that by everybody.
Well, the good thing is I can also make it. I can also cook a little bit.
Oh, see, a man of many talents. So speaking of that, how did you get into this world in the first place, right? Like, I mean, what was I love the smirk.
Yeah. So in my Jungle Gems bio, which they put together for the wine festival a couple of years ago, I was talking to Zach, head of creative upstairs, and I said, so I got into it because when I was like under the age of 16, I tried beer at a family gathering, and I hated it. But it was because it was like cheap Cincinnati. It was like burger or something.
Right.
And it's like, got anything else? And he said, well, we got some cognac and some wine. I tried that, and it's like, yep. I know where I'm going.
I love that.
Yeah. My bio says, actually tried beer at age 15, hasn't had any since.
But seriously, that like created like a lifelong passion ultimately?
Well, it started off just, knowing what I did like and didn't like. But I was working for a private club downtown in the mid-'80s. And they had one of the first American master somms working there. He was getting ready to go out to California to take over Oakland Country Club in Concord, California. And I worked with him for 6 months, and we tried everything from $5 a bottle California Cabernet to a 1961 Chateaubriand First Growth. And I will tell you, you should not have a 1961 Chateaubriand First Growth in your first 6 months of wine training. But
all about that benchmark.
Well, you remember when we were talking about appreciating something?
Right.
Yeah, you don't appreciate it. It's like, this is really different. Good. I mean, so I should clarify, 1961 was one of the best vintages ever.
Okay. And
Aubreyon's a First Growth, one of the at that point, one of the 4 first growths when it was made. And it's a 98 to 100 point wine no matter who tried it. And I had it in 1988. when it was probably at the peak of its drinking.
Oh, wow.
Because we found a half bottle of it in the cellar that wasn't listed. And he said, "What do you think we should do with this?" And I said, "Well, you're in charge. What do you think we should do with this?" And he said, "I think we should drink it."
Yeah.
It's been long enough now. I'm pretty sure no one's going to be upset about that.
What's the statute of limitations on enjoyment, right?
But yeah, it was just starting there. And then I worked for Aramark and Business Dining Services, and they were nice enough to send me to the CIA for the summer training class, which is the Culinary Institute of America. I went to the one in Hyde Park, Hyde Park, New York. And
fancier Hyde Park than the locals thought of.
And just was exposed to more and more good wine over the years. And by the mid-2000s, I was tired of working in for Aramark and Business Dining Services, and that was when I was offered a job full-time at Cork and Bottle. Yeah. And we just happened to have one of the best selections of Bordeaux and Burgundy and Champagne in the Midwest.
Too funny. I remember that when we first moved here, Cork and Bottle was a staple in the house because we live fairly close to it. And I'm in Northern Kentucky now. But it's I don't know where I was going with that. No, but it's nice to hear you.
It was a major player in the area.
Yeah.
And, you know, we had just especially Bordeaux and Burgundies, just amazing selection. So we had people, we had I won't name him, but he was a manager of the New York Met, ex-player, who would come in and just raid this. He would buy like $40,000 worth of Burgundy at a shot.
Gosh, that's crazy.
It is. But, you know, it's not hard to do it, $1,000 a bottle.
Well, I was going to say, and I was thinking about that here, too, where I have to assume people checking out with you, their bills have to look insane compared to the other departments, more than likely.
Yeah, there's some serious purchases.
I'm sure. Have you had any particularly high-profile people come in here that you feel comfortable saying?
I mean, they're just like local business executives and so on. I mean, nobody...
Just generally very wealthy people.
And nobody who would be known to the general public.
Gotcha. That's still cool, though. I mean, it's just so interesting to me that we've got all that kind of stuff under the roof, you know?
Well, that's just it. People really do come from all over, either electronically, looking at the inventory online, or, you know, in person if they're able to.
Yeah, I didn't even know about the online inventory thing until this week, actually, when I was doing a little pre-show research, and I was like, oh, online inventory. And then, yeah, what a great idea. I mean, I think that's something that we're kind of trying to work on across the board, but that's got to be helpful for the department, right?
Well, I mean, just yesterday we had a lady come in. She had seen we had a really rare bottle of Australian Shiraz, a Clarendon Hills Australis 2003, probably one of the finest Shirazes ever made. And she'd been looking for it because she and her husband had a bottle, and she found it online. It's like, came in, she got that, and I think 15. She ended up with 18 bottles, so she got 18 bottles total. But that was like her halo bottle.
Yeah, I love it. Now I'm thinking about, like, what would yours be? You talked about the halo bottle. Mm-hmm. What would be that for you?
Oh, for me?
Yeah.
A Costerie, Alain Costerie, Corton Charlemagne, which is a Chardonnay. I used to drink that back when it was like $150 a bottle.
Yeah.
So we can't get it. We can't get it here.
Wow. No kidding.
And it's in the mid $3s to mid $4s a bottle now.
Amazing.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, the price, that's what I'm talking about. The price of Burgundies, just
through the roof.
Beyond reason.
So crazy. But it's like kind of worth it. And now you've got me excited about it, where I'm just like, I wonder what that tastes like.
Well, you come over to the cellar. I'll show you the absolute closest thing you can get to it that does not cost $3,500 a bottle.
So, and I felt like that would be I feel like we could do a whole episode on that. It's like, oh, you have very fancy taste, but you don't have a very fancy budget. You know,
absolutely.
That'd be fun. We should definitely do that. Well, I keep meaning to come over to the tastings, and actually, I think this is like the first Wednesday in a little bit where I actually will be available to do that. So I'm taking you up on that today.
That's cool.
So on the personal side, then, if you still got a few minutes, okay. On the personal side, then, one of the questions I do like to ask, it hasn't made it in for all of the interviews. But if I hadn't met you here, you mentioned Formula One racing before, and that's something I'm trying to get interested in. But if I hadn't met you here, where do you think I would have run into you?
Formula One track, tennis court. I mean, there's a lot of things that I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
I also used to play a lot of instruments and like music and stuff. So a jazz club would be a good place. There's a place.
You would definitely find me there too.
Can I plug somebody?
Yeah.
Cafe Vivace over in Walnut Hills.
Yeah.
Great little live. It's right across from Esoteric Brewing.
Yeah.
Which we sell their products also in the beer department. Oops.
Yeah. And, I love it. Store plug.
But Cafe Vivace is a beautiful little venue for live jazz. They have everybody from the best piano players, guitar players, and vocalists to students at UC who are just getting started.
Yeah.
Just give them an opportunity to get in front of people.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that. And it's nice to know. I've been curious about the spot, but I haven't gone. It's that menu anxiety where I'm like, and I'm usually going places alone. So I'm just like, I don't know about this. Am I cool enough to be here? The answer is probably yes. But yeah, no, I appreciate that. So now I'm definitely going to go check that out. Oh, that sounds good. I too enjoy the jazz. I did a jazz festival a couple months ago.
Right.
It was in Indianapolis. So it was put on by the Jazz Kitchen. And I forget who the other sponsors were, but they took over this huge park. And it was a pretty wide variety of styles, but got to see a lot of great sax players. Marion Meadows showed up. Who else did I really enjoy that day? Corey Henry, who used to be in the group Snarky Puppy. I really, really, really enjoyed that. It kind of I'm like really hot on like a lot of the new jazz styles. I feel like fusion's kind of taken on a whole new thing. This is how I lose the audience.
No, not yet. No, but seriously, I started playing instruments when I was 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah.
And started off on woodwinds, clarinet, saxophone, oboe, and then switched over to brass a little bit. And then eventually my son, when he came along, he's started on cello, and he was like, this isn't for me. It's like, what do you think? He said, guitar. So,
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Do you still get to play it all?
Yeah, I still now my grandson is playing. He's
awesome.
Playing all the same instruments I started on. Plus, he's smarter. He had a piano.
I told myself at the beginning of the pandemic that I was like, I bought a keyboard cheap off an auction. I'm like, I'm going to learn this. And I did really well for a while. And I was surprised. I guess I'm like a little bit musically inclined. I've mostly been a singer. I play guitar, not super well, but well enough.
You can read music.
Yeah. And I played saxophone growing up. So I always love hearing another woodwind player. But I kept telling myself, I was like, this is going to make sense. Because I always really wanted to be into percussion. And so I was kind of like, I think piano might solve all of the needs I have, where it's a fun instrument for me to play while I'm singing. It plays to my need to be percussive with my hands and a bunch of other things. And I did pretty well for a few months, and then loaned the keyboard to a friend to compose some music for a short we were doing. And then I literally just got it back. And just not for a bad reason, but it was just one of those, like, life kind of got in the way repeatedly. And then I just got it back recently. So I'm slowly but surely, I'm building up my little music corner in here, because I love hearing when someone's like, I can play an instrument. I'm like, well, I just happen to have an alto sax hanging out over here. You'll laugh, but I literally do have my alto in the trunk of my car right now.
No, I'm not laughing. That makes perfect sense to me.
It's like, once you know me, right? Oh, that's so cool. Well, I think what we're going to need to do, I think you and I are going to need to do something with Formula One, because I have a buddy who's been trying to get me in forever. And he's like, dude, all you got to do is get up at like 3:45 in the morning. And that's when the streams start. And I'm just like, it's in that weird pocket now where I'm like, I've definitely hit that age where I'm like, okay, I'm too old to stay up for it, but I'm also still too young to wake up for it. But I'd really like to know more about that too. So impart your knowledge. I'm here. We'll drink. You can teach me about wine and fun, fast cars.
We can talk about the wines made next to the different Formula One venues.
Oh, see, that's the tour we need to do.
There you go.
We should just pitch that to the cooking school. We'll all go.
Uh-huh. We'll probably make a road trip.
Yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah, literally. Yeah.
Mons is in northern Italy. There's some great wine there.
Oh, see, that's perfect. No, I think we've come up with a plan. This is next year on the podcast. We got to do that. So I'd be into it. Yeah, right. I think it'll be fun. Well, seriously, thank you for your time today. I appreciate it. Hopefully this is the beginning of a beautiful relationship. Seriously, anytime you've got anything fun going on or anything you want to push or whatever, just come in. Even if it's just a few minutes that you want to get it on the air, I'm down. You've always got time here for me.
I'm on board.
Sweet.
Sounds great.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
All right.
Michael, thanks so much for your time. I look forward to taking in a few of those Formula One races and maybe a nice glass of a Bordeaux or something. I'm still not 100% clear on all of the different wine genres, but guess what? Michael will be back through every so often. We're kind of kicking around the idea of doing a New Year's episode with him and one of our experts from the Eastgate store for New Year's Eve, talking about like champagne and that kind of stuff. I think that'd be a lot of fun. If you think that would be fun, let me know. If you think it would be terrible and you would turn it off, also let me know. I'd like you to help guide the content a little bit. Well, everyone, you know it's that time. Go ahead and grab your 6-pack, if that's what you bought, or at least a glass of the Jungle Gyms and 50 West collab, Road to the Jungle. We're going to try out this new juicy IPA, and guess what? We even got Jungle to join all of us in the studio. So get ready for a lot of laughs, a lot of mayhem, and some great storytelling with the crew from 50 West Brewing. Well, welcome to the show, 50 West and Jungle.
We're here.
All right. Ferdinand the man.
I'm excited about this. I think we should start by trying this juicy IPA, the Citrus Bomb, as created by a combination of both us here at the Jungle and obviously collaboration with 50 West. So I'll drink to that.
Yeah, cheers.
I got new coasters in, so you guys get to be the first one to break those in. Little records.
They're great. I love the way they feel versus how they look. Like they look like they're gonna be like crunchy and hard and like made of vinyl, and they're pretty pleasant to touch.
I'm here for it.
So you might be missing one later, it sounds like.
That's fine. I'm prepared for it. That's good.
Yeah. I feel like Scott, you should like taste make everyone here. Like walk us through the whole thing.
Yeah. What do you want me tasting here?
Well, I want you to taste whatever you feel like you taste. I mean, your taste is your taste. You know, if you tell me this beer tastes like chocolate to you, that's what it tastes like to you, and there's no way I can argue against that. But what I taste and what most people probably will taste
There's a lot of chocolate.
It's a big orange juice, kind of explosion, if you will. So it was brewed with Cara oranges that we sourced here from Jungle Gyms. So there is actual citrus. We zested a bunch of them. So we used the citrus zest in the hot side of the brewing operation. We used some of the juice as well. We used a lot of the flesh and stuff in the fermenter later on. So there's a whole lot of orange that's been added to it. We also paired it with a lot of hops that are known to be kind of citrus and orange producing flavors. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of that orange on top of orange kind of thing. The yeast we used in it is it's a little bit of a newer yeast that's kind of meant to accentuate citrus and hop forward kind of fruity, juicy flavors. So we were just kind of trying to double down on the whole orange aspect of it.
It sounds about right. I get like that burst of like orange juice flavor instantly. That was my first thought. Yeah. What'd you think, Jungle? Did you try it yet?
What do I think?
Yeah.
Well, this is my first time, man. I mean, I've never seen anything like this before because I usually, when I drink beer, you hear pop and go, and I'm watching these guys swirling it and putting their nose in it, and I'm watching it swirling and putting their nose in it. What's going on, guys? I mean, is this like I only seen wine people do that? I've never seen them do that with beer. Tell me what that's all about.
The big difference is in beer, you don't spit.
You don't spit?
Yeah, as compared to wine.
I just wondered. I see it swirling these things. I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. Done. In beer, you always drink it down. But it's just how you kind of evolve the flavors and aromas out of it. When you drink a beer out of a can, it's like holding your nose and just taking it down.
I've never seen anybody do that before.
Yeah, a lot of what you taste is actually through your nose as opposed to actually in your mouth. So just having all the senses available it just fills out the flavor perception.
Actually, that being said, one thing that's really cool to do is swirl the beer and smell it.
Okay.
Right now, do it. Put your nose in it. All right, now do it again,
swirling.
but with your mouth open. It's like profoundly different.
That is weird.
Yeah.
I would have never thought to try that.
The other thing you could do is take a sip of it while holding your nose.
Okay.
It'll taste. It's a little tricky, but it'll taste completely different.
You'll probably get less fruit, more pronounced bitterness.
Oh, absolutely. It's like that straight
Hilty.
hoppy. Yeah. That's so interesting. I think it was. I really just wanted to show you guys how bad my motor skills were. I'm like, smell and open my mouth. I'm sorry.
Ferdinand, what do you say, Ferdinand?
It's exactly what we were going for. We wanted that big, juicy bomb, still to have a good hop profile to it, but I wanted this IPA to be approachable from people who didn't like IPAs to people who loved IPAs.
The fruit carries a lot of acidity, so it'll eat through some of that like creamy notes that you're going to get from the flaked malt. So when you drink a hazy IPA without fruit, it like will come off as a bigger body. It'll be sweeter typically, but that lower pH, especially the way that we added the fruit throughout the brew, it was peel on the hot side and then there was juice and puree on the cold side. It drops the pH. I mean, you're adding acid throughout, natural acid from the fruit throughout the brewing process. So it's going to strip body.
So when you describe things like body in a beer, what exactly should I be thinking? I drink beer, but I never think about it that way. So like what you know what I mean?
You should look at the beer and like look at the appearance of it, and then you should smell the beer and get an idea for what it smells like, and then you should taste the beer. And up front, that's like you're gonna get the first wave of flavor across your palate, and then when you swallow, part of the finish of the beer is the body. So it'll be referred to as dry or sweet.
Okay.
And sweeter is like literally just has more sugar in the solution. So it's going to, it'll have a bigger swallow, and it's literally it'll have more body. So when someone says body, it just means
thicker.
sweetness.
Okay.
It'll have more viscosity in it. It'll have a bigger swallow. And then dry is the opposite. It's thinner body and less sweetness and more of like a drying feeling and astringency across your tongue.
I was always afraid to ask it, to be honest with you. It's like
Yeah.
that. Because I'm just like, oh yeah, the body, sure, and then I'm just like,
Oh yeah, I get that.
Never be afraid to ask.
You're afraid to ask stupid the very very basics.
Right.
You know what? You're surprised when you ask that. If you ask the other people in the room, how many know what it is? Probably half don't.
Right.
So when you ask those stupid questions, a lot of people make faces, but they
they didn't know either.
And look,
he doesn't know what body is.
I gotta be the first
What body is.
everyone can taste the same flavors. The people that are good at tasting beer just have the vocabulary. That's all it is.
I the first time I'm telling you, you know what? I own like 2 cigar stores, right? Sell a lot of cigars. So I had these people, celebrities in from Florida, and I lit my cigar, and after I lit it, I started puffing, and I saw 3 of them look at me. I says, "What?" Another guy looked at me and says, "You lit your cigar wrong." I said, "I lit my cigar wrong." So all you people out there, I'm new to this, but I would say that you need to go someplace and find the proper way to swirl and sniff, because if you're in a public gathering and people are drinking beer, you might want to little show there, huh? Even if you don't know what you're doing, little twist and shout. That's
right.
Little show, nothing wrong with it. You can always act like you swirl it around, stick your back and forth.
I'm doing this all the time
You don't want
now.
to just pop the lid and guzzle. You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
If you want to really show them how fancy you are, when you have it in a stem glass like this, always hold it just by the bottom.
See, always hold
Okay.
it by
Never hold it
that's
in your hand because that'll warm it
right.
up.
That warms the beer. There you go,
better when it's
folks.
warm.
You can't see what's going on. Whoa, there you go, man. Whoa, stay in that jar, baby.
It's funny once you start doing it to beer, though, you can't stop, and it just becomes like an autonomic response. You'll pick up a beer and you'll be like, "Yep, this is like it." Just you automatically start doing it.
I can't sit and drink and enjoy a beer without dissecting every aspect of it.
Well, that's
It's
your
actually
nature.
no
Well,
fun.
that's your
It's almost
nature.
no fun to drink beer.
No, that's who you are. But that's who you are,
That's amazing. So how did this collaboration come to be, right? Like I know, obviously, we've done a bunch of work with 50 West before, and obviously things like the what am I thinking of? The movie theater at Eastgate and what have you. How did this all come to be? Like who wants to field that one?
I feel like all these types of like story conversations are good for Bobby.
You want me to go all the way back to
I
the
mean,
beginning?
I think take it back.
Go to
all
Genesis.
the way back to the beginning.
Yes, all the
to
way.
Genesis.
Facebook and
But once you get to the collab, you could probably pass it off.
I'll
to me
pass
for-
it off to you and Ferd at that point.
okay.
Well, I mean, we can go back to when I was like 4 years old, and
Maybe not that far.
no, maybe I think we can go back to when I was about 4
Curious
years
now.
old.
Tell me about your youth.
All right, so you want to hear about my youth? I was a small boy. I aspired to be a baseball player. So when I was a kid, my dad sold coupons for a living. And there was a guy he went to college with who had a grocery store that was buying coupons from him. There weren't a lot of people buying coupons from him. And that guy was Jungle. And so as a kid, we would drive 50 minutes to go buy groceries at this place called Jungle Gyms. because we had a credit at the store in exchange for
I
coupons.
remember that. Oh yeah.
So
Yeah,
most
me and
kids,
Bobby,
most
I
of you
paid
out
them
there
off with
probably,
credit.
most of you guys out there
that.
probably went to the grocery store that was around the corner from your house. We would go to this fruit stand that had a huge giraffe outside with some water that was in the front.
I forgot that.
And we would come through here and we'd buy our groceries, and that's where we went every week. So Jungle has always been in our life for a really long period of time. So fast forward to, I'm probably 27, 28. I moved back to Cincinnati, and I'm looking on Facebook, and I'm looking at Jungle Gyms, and they didn't have a Facebook account at the time. So I called up, not Jungle, but I called Jimmy and said, hey, Jimmy, you guys want a Facebook? Can I come like do your Facebook for you? So I started a Facebook thing with Jungle, and I would go through every week, and we would do the newsletter and create the Facebook. We come up with content each week, which it's amazing to walk in here and see now you guys have a podcast studio. Because at the time it was like, we didn't even have a Facebook page. By the way, I still control your Facebook page in case you're wondering.
Oh, wow.
Do you know that? Yeah.
No, I have no idea. See, now this.
So long story short,
So it's all about control.
Shut you down.
anyway, so fast forward to, we opened up a brewery around 2011, and I knew Ed from I would do the Facebook page of basically I would go down every week. We talked to Ed, we talked to different departments to put the newsletter stuff out there. So Ed was the one who gave us our first chance with our beer inside of Jungle Gyms. At which point I ended up handing that account over to Max. And I think this is, Max, where you can jump into the story and explain your relationship with Jungle.
I know what he's getting at.
This goes back.
So I walk in here. It's probably like 2013, 2014?
Yeah.
Something like that. And I walked in, sell beer. Bobby's like, I was brewing beer at the time, and then Bobby was like, no, you need to start selling our beer. And I was like, okay. So gives me a short list of places to go. The short economics of it was we had way more demand than we did supply. So I was like, okay, we're going to go to these few accounts, and I'm going to try to sell us out. And so I walk into, I'm like around town, and I walk into Jungle Gyms for the first time, and I had a list of names where I was like, okay, I'm supposed to talk to Ed here. How do I find Ed? So I just walked straight up to the bar, and I swear to this day, I feel like the woman behind the bar at the time like knew what she was doing to me. But I said to her, I was like, I'm looking for Ed. And she was like, oh yeah, no problem. I'll call him for you. So over the intercom, she calls for Ed. And that, I think, set Ed on fire. And so he responds back, you got to go find me in the aisles. And I was like, okay. I was like, at first I still didn't think anything was wrong. And so then I go find Ed finally, but I have no idea what the guy looks like. So I'm just kind of going up to people like, are you Ed? Are you Ed? And so I find Ed, and he looks at me and he's like, are you the one that intercomed to me? And I was like, yeah, I was just looking for you on Max. Like, I'm from 50 West. We have this beer. We're, on the east side of town. And he just starts laying into me. He's just like, you're the salesman. I'm the buyer. Get out of my...
Holy mackerel. I can't believe they're so... They act like that all the time.
No,
Hold on. The backstory on that.
was
Because
great.
I don't know how often you guys talk about it, but Ed, if you want to talk about craft beer
He's one of
in
the smartest people in
Cincinnati,
town.
well, he also, I don't think he gets enough credit for really being the first place that developed craft beer in Cincinnati. This is dating back even before the local breweries. Before
You remember that.
Ed was.
remember that.
You guys were buying beer that nobody wanted.
Right. I remember that. He came up to me and he says, man, we should double the size. I said, I got to move the cooler, do this for what? He goes, I'm telling you, we had the largest craft beer selection till everybody caught up, man. We were, right? You were there. Top dog, man.
So you had all of it. And I'll never forget when I was doing the newsletter, and we had the newsletter and the Facebook, one of the biggest things, what's Greg Cook from Stone, right? Mm-hmm. He came out to Jungle Gyms. And it wasn't the days where every week you could go to a tap takeover. It was like Jungle was the only one doing it. And he came into town and like 600-700 people showed up to see him. Because there was this craft beer thing that was booming, but nobody was taking advantage of it like it is today. And so Ed was like the godfather of this thing. And because of that, when it came to sales reps walking in the door, it's almost like a good football coach, or in sports where they're gonna beat up on you a little bit to kind of see prove up. So Max runs into this scenario.
So he throws me out of the store. That like he finishes with "Get out of my store," and I was like, "Dang, okay."
Jeez, I can't believe it.
So no, the story gets good though. There's a happy ending, and so
all I care about is at the end. Give me the sales figure. Are they up or down? All right.
oh, they're up.
That's
They're
the
up.
big
We're
thing.
good. We're good. baby.
Tell the rest of the story.
Yeah, so he throws me out, and I call Bobby, and I'm like, "We don't need these guys." Like,
I don't care how much beer these guys sell. I'm not selling beer to that guy. I'm like,
Bobby was like, "No, you have to go back in." So I learned. I wasn't a salesman yet, but I like learned over the course of like just repetition and being persistent, like what it took to be a salesperson, especially in beer. And yeah, Ed helped teach me that. Just going in week after week, and he was the toughest guy in town to sell to. But like once you created that relationship with him, he sold the most amount of beer of anybody. So yeah, the end of the story is Ed and I ended up in a good place, and we became buddies, and then it became easier than ever to sell a lot of beer, because if Ed was on your side, then you were moving.
Working, yeah, for sure. That's so cool.
so we've had a long relationship with Jungle Gyms, and then when it came time to do a collaborative beer, I mean, you guys. This is where you really took it over, right? Like you guys sat down and
it starts with Ferd.
Yeah, that's where he comes in.
Well,
Time to shine, Ferd.
Well, let me tell them the story, Fern, or I'll tell it to them.
well, you go ahead and tell it.
No, you tell it. It's better coming from you, because if it comes from me, sometimes they think I had to live a little bit.
Well, I was actually at home. I was off a day, and Jungle calls me. He's like, "Why don't we have our own beer?" I'm like, "Well, you can't make beer and sell as much beer as we do." He's like, no, that's what I'm talking about. Like, why don't we have our own beer? Why don't we have something that's like a beer that we're collaborating, that we're going to keep on the shelves, that we're going to do. He's like, but I don't want you to do any just hokey stuff. Like, it has to be good. Like, what are the players in town? Who are we going to work with? Like, what are we going to do? And I was like, well, let me think about it, get back to it. He's like, no, come on, babe, let's go. It's like, all right, well, 50 West. He's like, perfect. I love 50 West.
Nah, tell them the story. This is truth podcast. Tell them the truth. You're under oath. Tell them the truth. We don't want people to be listening and think it's
So
I liked that story.
What?
For the record.
People can listen to podcasts all the time. They want to hear the truth podcast.
So true.
Okay.
Fernand, you want me to tell them?
yeah, you tell him.
So I told him everything was fine. All right. And then he goes, I'm working with this brewery. I forget who it was. I said, ooh, no. You got to go to my buddy, Bobby. You go, Bobby. That's it. And the reason why you had a little easier time selling beer here,
Yeah.
because I told Eddie, me and Bobby goes way back, you saw the hell out of his beer.
I like that.
That kind of helped you a
Thank
little
you.
bit.
He also kept showing up, Jungle. I mean,
I said, whatever it takes, you give him prime spot. I says, he's a friend of mine. You move his damn beer.
I appreciate it. You're like the Wizard of Oz.
I'm not taking away from your salesmanship.
No, you can't.
But you just had a little shove.
Yeah. Sometimes you get a little push in the right direction.
Right. Well, we still are. I mean, we go back. Me and him, Ben, his beers. I'm not taking anything away from his beer.
No.
I'm just saying we have a good partnership. We work together good. We're going to do all we can to help 50 West. They help me all the time, and that's what business is about.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Help each other out when you can. Makes good sense to me.
Yeah.
They can make a lot of sales. They do a good product. Pfft, how easy is that?
Everybody goes home happy.
It's the best.
So then Ferd showed up with like some Cara oranges.
Yeah. He set up a meeting at our place. You take over.
Well, set up the meeting, talked to AJ, and I was like, what's the best orange in here? Like, I already knew I wanted to do oranges, and I'm going to tell you that I haven't had a plethora of different oranges. And he gave me like four. I'm like, try these. And I brought the one back, and I'm like, what's this? He's like, it's Cara. He's like, the rind's thick. And I'm like, perfect. They can use the rind and the flesh. And I brought the Cara orange. And Scott's like, yeah, I've used it before. And I'm like, damn, I thought I was bringing something new to the table. Like, no, I've used it before, but it is he's like, but it does really work very well in the kind of beer you want to make. So, because I wanted to make a juicy IPA, and he's like, that'll work perfectly. So, and then we walked around with it. Nobody wanted to eat it, so I sent it home with Bobby. So
So I thought you sent everybody home with one.
Yeah.
So then I took the orange and
The only orange.
the only orange that
the
we
only
had,
sample that we had.
and I
The one that everyone had handled multiple times.
and I
Yes.
I gave it to my 7-year-old daughter, and she liked it. But then Max came in the next day. He goes, "Hey, how's the orange? Do you think it'll be good?" I go, I don't know. I didn't try it. I gave it to my daughter, my 7-year-old, and he goes, "That was the only orange we had."
We got
She
you.
thought it was-
Luckily,
she thought it was
Scott had
great.
worked with it before, so we felt comfortable. But at the time, I was like, "Oh shoot, we got to go back and get more character."
This is the first time we used it in an IPA. We've used it in some fruited sours before, but so this was the first time in an IPA. But based off the experience, we knew it would work pretty well.
It's got a great taste. It's got a good body to it. You like me learning those terminology, right? Time to show off. But no, it really has a great flavor. I mean, it's got that that perfect balance of not being too sweet while still retaining the beer overall flavor. I don't know. I'm really happy with it. I'm excited, and there's a ton in front of me, so I'm doubly excited now.
Great. Can I open another one?
Please.
What is off the warm shelf?
I'm fine with drinking it like that, aren't you?
Okay,
Yeah.
just checking.
Yeah.
I think it'll be okay. I think we know a guy.
I think I just bought that though.
Yeah, you probably did.
How many oranges and stuff like this did you go through to? I know you had one.
Yeah, we had. Well, that one didn't actually make it into beer.
Made it to lunch.
We ended up getting. I think it was. How much did you give us?
100
and something.
150
pounds. We used most of that, and then we also augmented it with some actual puree that we had bought as well. I would say in total.
Oh, just wondering. I'm just wondering. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, in total there was probably 300 pounds of oranges in the batch.
That's
In a 10-barrel batch.
And a 10-barrel batch. So,
Well, that's exciting.
Would you say that's a fairly common amount?
I mean, it's up there. I mean, there's always somebody who's done more, and there's always someone who's done less.
And different fruits require different amounts of
Yeah.
concentration to come through. In
Is
the
that an
product.
acidity thing ultimately, as far as the mix goes?
Yeah, I mean, you've eaten fruit before. If you eat a blueberry, it's not super flavored, but
Sure.
if you eat a really ripe peach, it is.
Sure.
So it just depends on the fruit.
That makes a ton of sense.
Moisture content. I mean, strawberries are 98.5% water.
Right.
So if you're making a strawberry beer, you got to use a lot of strawberry because just the flavor doesn't come through as strong.
So
I might be making that percentage up, but it's got to be close to that. 'Cause
Sure.
So being
there's
that,
a lot of water.
what were you asking before? You were asking that. What was that basic question you asked? What was,
About the body?
yeah, body.
Yes.
Right? Well, I'm going to ask some stupid questions.
There are no stupid questions.
Well,
only stupid answers.
So your when you do this beer and you do all your tastes, you do your mixes. So apparently you've ran through the different fruits and vegetables. I mean, pears, strawberries. I mean,
We've used a lot of. We haven't used them all, but we've used a lot.
whatever
Yeah.
strikes our fancy.
Watery
What?
ones it's watermelon. It never
Yep.
shines through, right?
No, watermelon works. You have to use some of the rind.
Strawberry doesn't work.
Strawberry's
It
not
works.
the
You just
greatest.
have to use a lot.
Blueberry's not the greatest. It just depends on the fruit. You can get them all that come through. You just need
Yeah.
a lot of some of them.
yeah. So basically, you stayed in the American fruits and vegetables. Well, I mean, fruit.
Grain.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't think
yeah.
so. I don't. It's
Yeah,
just,
I'm just-
he's
where
the
I'm-
leader.
where I'm going.
We've played around with a few more exotic things. I mean, we've used kiwi before.
Yeah, well, that's
we
American.
use sour
It used to
sauce?
be
We
exotic.
use
Kiwi's
sour
not
sauce.
that-
Before on the draft, we
Go ahead. What else?
King of the Jungle. We used some crazy stuff on that.
Like
Oh,
what?
we did. We
That
used
goes way back.
kumquat in a beer one time.
Okay.
We used what were the other?
We've used
We did
Buddha's
pineapple.
hand.
Pineapple, yeah.
We used a little bit of Buddha's hand fruit in the sour
Oh,
ones.
that's yeah, which is basically all pith. So you just
So
zest
what
it.
I was getting at is later on, you might want to just, we have all those Asian vegetables and
Yeah.
international vegetables. I mean, fruits. It'd be really cool. Maybe later on you can get some white ones because it's all about flavor, right? And if you get a green one, you'll say, yeah, this doesn't work, just like a green strawberry or green anything. But there might be some stuff back there that one of these days, you make sure make sure from Lucy that the stuff is just ripe, and get some of that wild stuff we sell. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I
You
think
guys
that-
might be able to tap into a whole new flavor because we have all that weird. I don't know what that
Also
stuff
pretty
is.
on brand for
Right?
Jungle Gyms.
Huh?
Pretty on brand for Jungle
No,
Gyms.
I'm just
if we
bringing it
showed
up.
up with
I
a
know
really
they do it
tropical,
with
That's why I was asking how how much oranges if it was just 1 or 2, but you use the fruit.
Yeah, I
Use
mean,
the fruit.
it generally takes a lot. That's the tricky thing when you get into some of the more exotic stuff. You get into pricing concerns where it's like, oh, this stuff's really expensive,
I see what
and we
you're
got to
saying.
use like
Yeah, but we're not worried
400
about
pounds
that.
of it.
We're not worried about the price,
Yeah.
right? We're worried about having fun, right?
Right, having fun, making
Did I
great
say
beer.
that,
in
Bobby?
general.
Did I say that? I'm getting old, buddy. I'm getting old. I'm getting old, boy. I can't believe it. I can't believe I said that.
It's on tape. They can play it back.
I know.
When you're stuck.
I'll edit it
Yeah.
out. I got you.
But I mean, it might be fun. Now you might want to get that. What's that one Asian that if the people put it on the airplane, they actually will stop. And this is truth, by the way.
Durian.
Yeah,
They'll
but
actually
see, that's-
stop the airplane and make sure they get off that airplane because of durian, right? And we sell it frozen. We sell a lot of it, but it's frozen because, man, if you let it thaw out. Now, if you had that, if we were doing this, we'd have to do it outside. We'd
Right.
have
Well,
to
that's
do the
that's
sampling
why
outside.
like durian, the
Yeah,
king fruit.
yeah,
Which you're like,
baby. Taste
oh
that.
god, I
Whoa,
can't
whoa.
drink that.
It's like Limburger. Oh,
Yeah. Right. So
don't swirl it. You don't want to do that. You
don't
wanna
swirl
do
this
that.
beer.
I'm trying to develop
Put a little
Please
nose
drink
in.
from the can.
Oh, yeah, we'll
Please
put on
drink
the
from the
side, drink
can.
only
Yeah.
from the can while holding your nose.
Yeah, that would be. Oh,
Let me piggyback off that. Has there been a certain fruit or style or something that you all have been wanting to try that you haven't gotten to yet that you would like to do that you'd be willing to share with the audience?
I'd have to think about it for a little bit. Yes, there's always new things out there. There's, if you say you've done everything, then you're lying because you haven't. There's no way to do it all. Yeah.
It's whatever strikes your fancy. I brew a beer every year for my birthday.
Cool.
And this year I'm doing a stout, but I'm going to put a ton of banana puree in it. And then we're going to put a little bit of peanut butter. So kind of Elvis inspired stout.
That sounds delicious.
But it's not original. There's guys that have put banana in stout before, but it's different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, originality is tough to come by. I feel like at this point in existence for humans,
Especially
like
in craft beer.
right. And I mean, but I look at it all the time where it's just like you just got to do it a cool way, kind of. You know what I mean? You put your own like unique spin on it.
Yeah.
That sounds delicious to me.
It's gonna be great. I think.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Imagine like chocolate peanut butter banana stout.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. I demand an invite to your birthday.
Well, my
Brew's
birthday.
an honest-
I brew it
Brew's an
on my
honest birthday every year.
but it comes out. It usually comes out like December, January. So,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll maybe Ferdinand will buy some.
I just like
Maybe
watching
he'll throw me
everybody
out of the
pressure
store.
him into buying beers now. I'm like,
First, you're gonna have to.
We'll put a couple kegs on. Yeah, I want 2 half barrels.
It's gonna be a really expensive keg.
Yeah, pastry.
but it's gonna be fun, right?
ABV 12%.
Be good.
You and I can't get. Well, I understand why. I understand. How come you have to be hungover? I just don't get it.
Yeah, that's what I like.
You can create like a baby and decide whether it's a boy or a girl, but we can't figure out how to make something that makes you feel like alcohol, and you're not hungover at the end of it.
I'm sure maybe this is our
Just
$1 million
moderation.
idea.
Don't drink too much.
But yeah, but you want
That's
the
not
whole
fun.
like.
We're back to the fun thing.
This is it's probably me another 100 years till something like this. But I always ask myself that question. Like, you wake up next day and you're like, oh God, why do I feel like this? And you're like, how can they figure out all this stuff, but they
Right.
can't figure that out?
Like figure out how to take the bad part of
How many
existence away.
beers do you have to drink before you feel bad?
Depends on the ABV. Yeah, but I mean, right? Depends on.
he's
I mean, my
lightweight.
son Chris, he drinks 32. I know because when I take out the garbage, it empties in a bucket, and he's still walking.
It just depends, But yeah,
I just wondered.
I think at some point in time, at some point in the universe, this will happen.
He loves this idea. He's
I
brought
love
this up
it.
2 or 3
I just
times in the
love
last
it. I just
month.
drives me
I'm
crazy.
into it. I think this is a good idea.
Why? You can create a
Without a buzz,
I
maybe
think
they
there's
won't
like
drink it.
the
keep
morning
the
after
buzz,
pill
but the
that you
morning
take.
No, but like, how come you
to kill the
can't? We
hangover,
can't
not
figure
the-
out how to make you feel like you're having fun and all those effects, and then at the end of it, you have to feel like,
You have to pay for it. I'm
Right?
like, I don't want
Right,
to.
you gotta-
I was like, please, I didn't ask for the bill. You know?
Yeah, we're applying for a dispensary. Is that what you're talking
different.
about?
That's
Oh,
a different
that's-
feeling.
I'm into that
That's
too.
different.
Bring it up. We're
That's a
applying right now
psychedelic
for
versus
one.
depressant. But yeah, and that's the easy answer. Is always,
That's
well,
good.
marijuana doesn't make you feel like that. But those are two different feelings.
Right. And then it gives you other but I'm right with you where you're like, yeah,
Right.
it is. That is a great point. That why hasn't there been?
You
especially
can
for all
go to the
advances-
doctor's office right now and decide that 1, you want to create a baby, and 2, whether it's a boy or a girl.
Right.
You can do more than that with CRISPR. You can choose eye color. You can choose hair color. You can do all kinds of stuff.
How come we can't choose no hangover?
Right. Exactly. And I'll pay the premium for it. I'll pay 2x for the beer if it doesn't get me hungover the next day.
Really?
I want to get messed up still. I definitely want to get drunk. But the next day, if I got to wake up and was like, I'm refreshed.
so much fun that I got to do
I
last
did drink
night.
a lot of Cara
Three
Orange.
beers that are higher in alcohol, three
By the way,
beers that
the
are
other
water.
component in Bobby's
Not a
fantasy
seltzer,
land is
just a
that this product
flavored
is also
water. Like,
0 calories.
Not zero, but it has some like I don't know. We'll see. I think there's going to be some scientific jumps in the next 100 years, just like we had in the past 100.
That's the collaboration I'd like to be involved.
I mean, who would ever? We've got
jungle.
a freaking podcast studio in a grocery store. That probably didn't exist 100 years ago.
No.
international
Bring that
market.
big guy over here. I like that. We'll
Yeah,
start
Paul
off
Tenner.
with him.
Yeah,
That'd be awesome.
Bring him over. That'd be good. Not
Anytime.
that they lost. What the last one they lost.
no, they're
last
good,
one.
Jungle.
No, they're good. Yeah,
They're good?
They won
They're
last
good.
year,
Yeah.
I
I remember when I had a suite a long time ago. I averaged. Let me see. I checked 10 years. 10 years of this guy's. 10 years, and he won 4.6 games in 10 years. That's when I took the suite and I said, "Forget it. I'm done with you. You make all the money, you do everything, and you supply a shitty product."
The product's good now. It's good.
Now the product. Thank God for the fans.
You're better.
Yeah.
No, the fans deserve a little bit. Steeler fans, every year they always have a chance to win. But the Bengal fans, what's happening? What do you think's happening?
Steelers beat them
They
twice.
go to the playoff, they
No,
drop the
Steelers
first
got
game.
beat twice this
Oh.
year.
So this
For
is
sure.
great.
You
It's
Steelers-
great for the
you Steelers
fans. They deserve it.
Vikings.
I totally agree.
Vikings.
No, I
I
agree
knew
too.
it was a different one.
Well, the Bengals got them twice this year, so
I know.
Well, I'm
Dalvin
leaving.
didn't fumble.
I got to go back to work. You guys just now you're getting off
We'll
the
just sit
beer.
here and-
You're getting off the beer, and you get into the marijuana,
nitty-gritty.
having babies, football.
Yeah, the
And these
real
people,
podcast.
These people listening don't want to listen to this crap. They're listening because they want to hear the beer, the
Absolutely.
swirling, the aroma, the taste, the chocolate. Carry.
All right, let's jump back in on the serious side. So we talked about some of the prep stuff. Do you feel like we covered enough on the brewing side for you?
I mean, it depends on how deep in the nitty gritty you want to go.
I'm super interested. I think the audience is generally interested. I don't want to be like, talk about that thing again. You know what I mean?
Well, one cool thing that he can talk about is the cosmic punch yeast and like the thiol production and all that.
I'm here for it.
Do you know a lot about that? Yeah,
I mean-
obviously you do, but like, do you want to talk about that?
I mean, it's not too much more than what you just said, but basically, I mean, there's a lot of compounds that are in hops, mostly oils, and there's different things that you can do in the brewing process to try to. They're volatile, so if you cook them, they just flash off or turn into other things, and they're not preserved. So a lot of the brewing process, if you're trying to make a very fruit forward or juicy IPA, regardless of the actual juice you're adding, there's a lot of different things to try to do with the hops to preserve oils. Some oils you want to kind of convert into other molecules of a slightly different oil, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there's always this evolution of research that's going on with hops. So every couple of years, they're like, "Oh, remember all that stuff we said a couple of years ago? Forget that. We realized, this is now better." So one of the big things these days is
It's like babies.
Yeah.
yeah, just like babies. Yeah, exactly.
We're back
So-
to it.
car seats are still good.
Well, every 10 years you got to throw them away
Cartridge
or something, regardless.
No, but how you wrap the baby? They like. Of
course, they're gonna change that.
They used to be like swaddle the baby. And they say don't swaddle the baby.
Yeah, I mean, they used to say you don't need a colonoscopy until you're 50. My doctor just said I should get one, and I'm 45. Things
exactly.
change.
Yeah, no, I'm here for it. So now that we're back to
But anyways, so one of the big things in hop research right now, they talk about thiols, which is a particular compound, and there's several different oils that are come in hops that have that and can create that. So some of what they've been doing now with yeast is there's some reactions that happen during fermentation and basically can kind of convert and change some of the oils into different oils and thiols, things like that. So there's some newer yeast research that's gone on, and one of the new yeasts that's out there now is called Cosmic Punch, and it's basically it helps increase this thiol production through the fermentation process, which helps to amp up some of the kind of juicy notes and characteristics. So it's all. I mean, when I started homebrewing in the '90s, like the cutting edge of technology was, figuring out, hey, we found this new weed out back, and it actually like works pretty good in beer, and that was like a big thing. And now like there's university level research going on where they're not just breeding hops and cross-breeding hops, the same as they do with other agricultural products, like if not even more than a lot of agricultural products these days. Breeding programs, and now with yeast, some of the yeast has started getting into becoming genetically modified through things like the CRISPR technology and that kind of stuff, where they're selectively pulling out particular off-flavor components that come from a yeast during fermentation, saying we like that flavor, we don't like this flavor. Let's cut them.
Like getting drunk, we don't like the hangover.
That's where it will.
It's going to get there.
That's where it eventually will come from if that's ever going to happen.
That's
sure.
really cool.
So there's a lot of real serious research that goes on in the world of beer and the flavor productions and stuff, way more than it ever did before. So there's always new things coming out. I mean, we were just meeting with one of our hop suppliers this morning. You get together with them a couple times a year, and there's business to take care of, but then they're always like, oh, here's what we got new. And he was telling us about 2 or 3 things that I'm like, oh, I would never even have thought that could possibly ever become a thing. He's like, yep, it's the next big thing. Okay, cool. Get us some, we'll try it,
Sign me up.
Yeah. So it's constantly changing.
Yeah, just in other terms, but like saying the same thing that he is like the thiols are this yeast produce this thiols. They're like aromatic sulfur compounds that Riesling wine has a bunch of them naturally occurring in the grape skins and in that varietal and I think in a lot of the plant actually. And so you get like that yeast when it ferments, eats the maltose and ferments the beer, it creates like a white gummy bear note. It creates like kind of these like what you would expect out of a Sauvignon Blanc or a Riesling. You can actually buy the grape skins and must as a powder and use it in beer, which it will increase thiol production. But yeah, the hops naturally have it, and then this yeast naturally has it, and then you get like a very tropical beer. Okay. Then we threw a bunch of orange throughout the process on, so you get this like really structured citrus note that goes from like pithy and oily to like juicy and acidic. And then like on the background of that, you'll get those yeast notes where it's like, oh, there's like a little bit of like squishy, overly ripe, like squishy tropical fruit and white gummy bear and guava kind of thing going on.
I love that. The white gummy bear thing. It's like, I didn't know how to describe that taste till you said that. And I'm like, oh, that's it. That's perfect. Amazing.
Descriptor words.
Yeah,
There you go.
right.
That's another one. Add that one to the bank.
Game.
Yeah, exactly.
Max is one of the best.
I feel like that's my whole job, though, is literally just meeting people smarter than me and then going,
oh, I get some white gummy bear.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody knows what a white gummy bear tastes
right,
like.
exactly. And then the next time I'll be out, you'll see me swirl my glass a little bit.
Oh.
You'll have just a pocket full of gummy bears.
Yeah,
It's like
to compare the
different
taste.
flavors.
This is a green gummy bear.
Like I don't already carry a bag of gummy bears with me.
It's like the guitar.
You look like a guy who would.
finding the notes on the different strings.
That's so true, though.
Get some
Right?
We
You're
get some
like, oh
green
my God,
apple
those
Jolly
make the
Ranchers.
same thing. You
That's
just
a
walk
good
around with
point.
a white gummy bear and be like,
See, all art is sort of the same
equal,
thing.
the same.
But I am really going to carry gummy bears with me now. Challenge accepted.
Yes.
We can start talking off flavors and get some green apple Jolly Ranchers.
Your green apple Jolly Rancher.
Yeah, you don't want the green
No,
flavors
bad.
in
Okay.
beer. That's a bad flavor.
That would maybe be
Why
a
is
left
that bad
right
in beer?
pocket versus left pocket.
He'll explain it.
Okay, yeah.
Oh,
Why is
just
that bad?
Personal preference. We don't want to talk too much about things that are bad in beer. Keep it positive, but
Sure.
Also, if you teach all these fans how to recognize all the off flavors, they're gonna get too smart.
Exactly.
Oh, that's a good point. Okay.
But
maybe
anyways,
You can never be too smart.
This is
so there are some different
Jim's
I'm
podcast
teasing,
after
I'm teasing.
hours.
there are some different off flavors that can be derived from yeast, especially if it's stressed during its fermentation. They'll throw off some flavors that are generally not very good.
Okay.
One of them is called acid aldehyde. It's basically like a green apple kind of flavor, and it's if you're trying to explain to people, like if we had a beer right now that had it, I could try to explain it to you, and you'd be like, okay, yeah, you give me that look. You're like, yeah, sure, okay, great.
Yes.
And then, but I would say, do you taste green apple Jolly Rancher? And then you would go, yes, that's what it is. Okay, now I know what it is. Like I can tell you all about what acid aldehyde is and what it tastes like and this and that, but it's great when you can have that common knowledge like descriptor that everyone understands. Just like, okay, the white gummy bear, the green apple Jolly Rancher,
Band-Aid.
buttered popcorn,
Band-Aid.
Band-Aid, yeah, buttered popcorn, burnt rubber, There's all kinds of things like that can be off flavors in beer that I can tell you the chemical names of it, and you'll be like, okay, sure. But then I'll say, yeah, that thing that tastes like burnt rubber. Oh, yeah, now I know what you're talking about.
The tire flavor.
But for the most part, how they end up in there is like yeast is a single cellular organism, right? They're like these living things they eat and like dispose of what they eat. And so it produces the ethanol, it produces some of the carbonation, and it produces the flavor of the yeast, right? So there's different strains of yeast that create different flavors, but like those flavors are just metabolites. So like it takes in the sugar and it produces all these things. Well, some of those things don't taste great. And so if you process the beer correctly, it'll naturally clean itself up and make a really nice flavor. And if you don't process it correctly, it'll leave some of those flavors behind. So that's where you'll get the green apple, and that's where you'll get like phenolic flavors or, spicy notes that aren't supposed to be there, or smoky notes, or so on.
I used to use a very much more rudimentary and slightly crude explanation of that, and basically say, well, look, yeast takes in sugar and it pees out alcohol and it farts out CO2. That's what it does. But along with that, a lot of other things come out. And there's a lot of things that make that be different. Temperature, the environment, whatever. I like to say it's what comes out of you the next day if you had Chinese food last night or you had Mexican food last night.
Okay. I mean, I'm like, it does
seriously,
like
very
olfactory
the same
experience.
thing's coming out, but it might not
I love
exactly
that. I know
be the
we're
same.
all kind of like,
I like Chinese and Mexican food both.
Combined
both
them
have
at the
rice?
same time.
I mean-
Combined at the same time. Yeah.
That's the
but it
kind
wouldn't
of
necessarily-
leftovers I'm trying to leave behind.
Real tornado.
Right.
But there's been a lot of times where I've used that analogy and people are like, oh, now I get it. Okay.
It is it says a lot about all of us as people.
Well, people
realistically.
get nervous though when sometimes we say they're like, "Well, I'm not drinking beer anymore if it's just peeing and fart." Like, no,
Right.
That's fermentation as a whole, whether
Right,
it's
yeah,
wine or liquor or whatever. That's how this process.
Yeah, it's like
Cheese,
you eat a pickle
yogurt.
recently. Guess what? There's some farting happening.
Yeah.
That's awesome. How often do you all do collaborations? Well, first off, with an international market, is this like the first time for you all?
This is the only international market I know of. So
We've actually done like more low key collabs with Jungle Gyms before. This is the first one that we've ever packaged.
Oh, okay.
We used to call it King of the Jungle Ale, like ale, like
nice.
play on words. And we did, I don't know, for how many did we do? 3, 4?
Or
It was
Twice.
pineapple twice, kumquat,
Kumquat.
and something else. Because kumquat wasn't the last one, I don't think.
no, we went back to pineapple. Yuzu, yes.
Yeah, which is like a Japanese
Like
citrus.
lemon,
fruit.
how'd
lemon
that
lime
go?
citrus.
Yeah.
They were all very, very, very good, but they were just on draft at both stores.
Just made less of an impact because like the second you package a beer, people can ship it, they can trade it, they can keep it in their fridge. It has like more, mind share because
different.
it's in your fridge and
It's
you
like
see it
physical
like
media.
you open
Yeah.
it up. Yeah, it's a physical media.
Yes, exactly.
So this is the first one that we ever packaged. So it'll probably go down as the only collab, or not the only, because hopefully we do more. But like it'll be known as like the first time probably that we ever collaborated with Jungle Gyms to most people.
Right.
But it's actually like the 5th.
This counts, though, right? Like I get to bring it home. Yeah, you make such a good point about that. How it is like, yeah, it won't sit with the collective consciousness until it is like an actual
It's
physical
a
product.
physical
that you
thing.
can-
Yeah.
That's why vinyl got popular.
I was just gonna use the music analogy. Yes.
Yeah, the music is always the
Vinyl's
answer.
back.
Yeah, it's awesome.
it's
Mostly
a
because my
physical thing.
eyesight's going, so now I can really see the artwork.
Well, no, same thing. I'm dealing with that with video games right now. Mm-hmm. It's like the holidays are coming around, and my son wants video games for right. And you just download it now, so now it's like, here's a paper card. Where like before it was like, oh my god,
Yeah, you got that box.
you get to
Remember
and you're
opening a
like,
Nintendo? What that felt
yes.
like? Yeah, now it's a 12-digit code.
Yes, like, here, scratch that off and go put it in downstairs.
Yeah, at least they left the scratch offset. I'm like worried for
Yeah.
that to go away, where eventually it's just gonna be like my mom or someone's mom printing stuff off. You know what I mean?
Cool.
Ridiculous. Oh, okay. So I know this is a part of a series. Are there any hints or future products I can get people excited about?
Jungle insisted this be a truth podcast. So,
Okay. No, 100% truth. I'm
the
here
truth
for it.
is we plan for more, but we have not decided what we're gonna do yet. This one we put out there. It's kind of proof of concept. I think that like the structure of and the organization of how we schedule and launch the collaborative beers will get more sophisticated as we see the results of this one. So
Cool. No, I appreciate the honesty.
yeah, this
I'm
is
looking
this is
forward
the
to it.
first one that we're we're stoked about it. We just dropped it off yesterday.
Yep.
And yeah, we think it's great. It's a really neat beer.
I've been
It's out on the
teasing.
floor, both stores.
Both stores
both
out on
stores.
the floor. It's on draft at Fairfield. By the time this podcast comes out, it will be on draft at Eastgate. But in a perfect world, since it'll be a week away, hopefully it'll all be gone.
And I was going to say that, so I've been drilling them
So
all.
why are we
on
even
the-
doing this then?
Yeah, no, I've been drilling everybody for the last week, though, setting it up for this, where I've been like, hey, go buy a case now because we're all going to drink it together when we drink together at the beginning of the show. So I thought that'd be a lot of fun. And that's a proof of concept for me because I've been trying to do little stuff like that where I'm like, all right, I'm going to buy some stuff in the store. You guys have 2 weeks to buy it. Come in and get some, and then I'm going to eat it with you, and then we can all kind of talk about it, but it's mostly just me talking to them. But they feel like they're a part of it.
We should have brought
Right,
some
audience?
oranges in here.
That would have been good, and we could have sampled it comparatively.
Yeah,
I totally blew it.
we can like
This is how I get fired.
yeah, we'll like do games and stuff where it's like eat this one blindfold. Also, we could put the podcast on the label and be like, hey, want to hear us talk about this
That'd be
beer?
awesome. Yeah, imagine we do a label, use the artwork or something like that.
Who did the artwork for that? by the way?
So I actually
I think
believe it
that's
was-
a label right there.
Yeah.
That's label right there.
I mean, I would be all kinds of
So
excited
being
about that.
honest, Jungle wants a label to pop. So
Maybe there is a podcast brew. Hi. Don't you love this? Everybody loves watching us in the studio. This is my favorite
It's like
part.
you're
They have
famous.
no idea what
You
we're doing
just
in
by-
here.
Yeah. They're just like, what are they talking about?
well, beer probably because there's beer on the table.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that a new soda?
Yeah, it is. 7.3%.
So we need to come up with a clever acronym for what that could stand for. That would be the name of a beer, and this could be a label.
That's how you got to pronounce it phonetically. I'll work on that. I'll come up. I'll run some ideas by you guys.
Well, it ends in I, which is helpful because then we can just add PA to it.
Right?
IPA.
Yeah,
Or
right.
roll into something imperial
Well, no,
too.
yeah, double IPA.
I keep wanting, if the letters were different, I keep wanting to say we could call it, what would Jungle do? If it was W, if it was W,
I got that a lot at
if it
first.
was
They're like,
WWJD. Or
did they
something.
say what would jungle do? And I'm like, no. It's like an old radio call sign. Like, it was like any station east of the Mississippi was a W starter or K for the West Coast. So
No
Is
one
that
knows
how
what
that
means
works?
yeah,
anymore.
so W Jungle Gyms International, for example, here.
Hold on, wait,
Yeah.
explain that again.
So
K?
yeah, so if like any radio station built west of the Mississippi
Yes.
starts with a K. So that's why you have like out in LA, you've got like K Rock and you know what I mean, all that stuff. And then
Yep.
east, since we're here, we've got WKRC or
So the W's are east of the Mississippi.
yeah, which is really weird that they picked
Ks.
this. Is they're like, yeah, why don't we do like east and west? I don't know
Why
what
wouldn't
the
it just
why
be
is there.
A&W,
You'd
but-
think that would be the case, but I feel like it was just
Sounds
It was
cooler.
from that time of existence where
Like Stand By
people
Me?
just. Yeah, I think.
That's what it just comes to.
Well, no, I really think it's
hey,
like-
welcome to W.
I kind of feel like it was that time where we just kind of deliberately made shit more difficult for no reason. We're like, everything in the West, it starts with K now. You know what I mean? I'm like, what could that even have to do with
We're gonna use
anything?
the imperial system where the rest
They
of the
thought
world
the West
Exactly.
stopped with
Yeah, we're
kinda
Kansas.
doing
They're
this.
like,
Seriously.
and
Yeah,
Yeah, so there's probably a bigger reason, but every time I look it up, nobody really has a good
but like
answer
none
as
of
to
this
why.
matters. We should all wear rubber bands that say WJJI on them.
And just wait till it happens. But I'm bringing that back. That's my first piece of merch. So
I think it
oh,
should
that's
be.
really
They're like-
weird, you know?
Wait, what were you talking about with rubber? You just like the rubber?
When they were doing
Like
the
a Livestrong,
WWJD.
Remember that trend?
bracelets.
Everyone had the
yeah,
rubber
yeah,
bands on.
yeah. I like those rubber bands.
Yeah, that was a fun thing. I don't know. I kind of actually don't know why we moved away from them. They
There's
probably
too many people did.
Right.
it.
Live Strong
Yeah.
did steroids.
I think that was it.
I
I think
heard
we can
it.
blame the
Like,
failure
I
not
heard
on
it.
Lance
Yeah, they got it.
Armstrong. That's a good point.
Yeah, because they were the first. Were they the first one, or was WWJD?
I don't know. It seemed
Live
like they
Strong
happened at the
was the
same
big
time.
one.
Yeah.
in my mind.
They were both big. Man, everybody had a Livestrong bracelet.
Oh yeah.
Well, on a serious note, guys, was there anything else that you wanted to cover on the beer and the collaboration that I did not uncover earlier? I feel like the stories, the behind the scenes were good. I felt pretty confident on that. Is there anything that you wanted to make sure you got out there for?
Fred, we didn't talk about you winning the freaking weight loss challenge thing.
Because I put it all back on.
you look great.
We do have some good pictures of Ferd brewing the beer.
Oh, that's
I don't
awesome.
know where those ended up, but
There's-
link to those somewhere.
Yeah, there should
bet
be a
creatives got
QR
them
code
somewhere.
on the sign, and you can go grab that. And I can't wait to get my hands dirty on the next one. So
Yeah, I don't
and
know if
you
we
I
guys
can't.
like
I'd
the
like your
name?
hands to be
You guys
clean
like
if you're
the
going to be
name?
handling my beverages.
The name of the beer?
Name of the beer?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that
it's
was
great.
my
I love
first
the
dart.
I love the artwork on it.
That was my first dart, and they were
They-
like, "It sounds
they-
great."
they
I
actually
think it's a
designed
winner,
most
and I'm
of it.
like,
Alex like
okay.
tweaked it a little
I
bit,
just-
but they
I
designed it.
wanted to stay away
just
from
love
Jungle
them.
Brew because
Monorail.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we need like an official succinct like plug, but like someone can be like, hey, it's available at both locations, $9.99. This probably should come from
I
you.
think that Yeah, I think you just did it.
That's the plug. No, but if you want to drop that plug in for sure.
Well, yes, it is available at both locations. Currently, it is on draft at Fairfield. It won't last long. I think I sold a half a keg of it last night. Just about everybody who came in, because I was behind the bar, I was like, I helped make this beer. They're like, what? Really? Yep. Grabbed it, and a lot of people grabbed 6-packs on the way out.
Perfect.
So definitely jump on this beer.
Yeah, it won't last long. We didn't make a lot of it.
I'm drinking through my selection already, so thanks, guys. I appreciate you all coming in today. That was awesome.
Thanks for having us.
What an episode. Am I right? I had a great time. I always have a great time. If you can tell that about me, I try to make the best of everything always. And it's easy when things are generally fun, right? Huge thanks to the 50 West team for coming out here. Huge thanks to Jungle for his time too. I always love when he comes down to visit. So we've got some fun stuff coming up in the future weeks. The future weeks. Oh, that sounds like a weird indie band. But in the upcoming episodes, I'm working on a little episode right now about some international holiday treats and with a focus on chocolates. I could bring in my friends from Ruby's Chocolates, a brand that we conveniently carry here in the store. I had, I know ardent followers, an ardent supporter of the arts. But some of you longtime followers and supporters will know I dropped a little teaser clip of this, but I had a really wonderful experience and a lengthy conversation with a comedian by the name of Tony Woods. He's mentored a lot of great comedians, blah, blah, blah. I won't dive into all the details yet because we'll talk about that on the episode, but you can look forward to hearing the extended interview here probably in the next week or so because... And I already made 2 references to him because Tony's next podcast stop is the Joe Rogan Experience. How crazy is that? Can you imagine using me as the warm-up? I can. I was there. It was great. So that's what we got coming up here. I'm looking forward to sharing that stuff. As always, you can let me know what you want to see on the show. I'll go ahead and drop that in one more time. Podcast at junglegyms.com. Call me. 513-674-6855. Country code 1 if you're calling from outside of the country. Leave me a message. Tell me what you're thinking. Let's just chat for a little bit. We can be friends, right? Like I say, a friend whose personal phone number you just don't have. I'm not trying to help anyone move that's not myself. And even then, I'm probably going to try and find someone I can hire for cheap. All right, folks. I think that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed. I look forward to next week's episode. And in the meantime, I'll see you out in the aisles. The Jungle Gyms podcast is recorded in the WJJI studio inside Jungle Gyms International Market in Fairfield, Ohio. The Jungle Gyms podcast is produced and hosted by Mark Borison.